In part 1, we discovered why you're exhausted. Your biological clock might be fighting society's schedule every single day. But here's what matters. You're not broken. Your chronotype is strongly influenced genetically. Your inner lion, bear, wolf, or dolphin is hardwired into your DNA. And today, you're going to discover which one you are, calculate how misaligned your life is, and get a customized action plan to work alongside your biology instead of against it. So, let's find out who you really are. We're using Dr. Michael Breus's lion, bear, wolf, and dolphin framework today. It's practical, it's memorable, and it makes your biology actionable. There are, of course, other ways to do this, and I'll link Dr. Breus's and those other validated assessments in the description if you want the more academic sounding version. But first, a thought experiment to figure out your chronotype. So this is the holiday test. Think about your last vacation, at least a week long. And after the first few catch-up days, what pattern did your body naturally fall into? When did it want to go to bed? When did you wake up without an alarm? Because that pattern, that's your chronotype talking. And if you can't remember a week-long holiday, try answering these 4 questions about your natural preferences. Not what you're forced to do now, but what you naturally would want to do. I'll also be mentioning midpoints here as rough estimates. These midpoints will be explained in a later section. So the first question is, without any alarms or obligations, when do you feel you would naturally fall asleep and wake up? The second question is, when is your brain the sharpest for complex thinking? Before 10 a.m., midday, after 5 p.m., or is it never really? The third question is, at 9 or 10 p.m. at night, are you exhausted and ready for bed, naturally winding down, or are you still energized and productive, or are you wired but tired? The fourth question is, when do you feel hungry for breakfast? Is it immediately upon waking, 1 to 2 hours later, or not until late morning, or do you have an irregular appetite? And here's what your answers to those questions would reveal. Lions, about 15% of the population, you would wake before 6 a.m. You might feel hungry in the morning and energized. Your peak productivity would occur before noon, and you're probably exhausted by the early evening, and your sleep midpoint, which I'll talk about later, is before 3:30 in the morning. Bears, 55% of the population, you would wake up around 6 to 8 a.m. and usually ready for breakfast within an hour or two. Your peak energy is around midday with a natural wind down as the evening progresses. And your midpoint is around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Now wolves, 20% of the population, you sleep past around 8 or 9 a.m. if you could. You're not usually hungry until late morning or early afternoon. Peak creativity occurs around 5 p.m. and you're alive still at 11 p.m. Now your midpoint for sleep would be around about 5:30 a.m. Dolphins, the light sleepers, around 10-ish% of the population, tend to sleep with fragmented sleep and rarely feel fully rested. You may well have an irregular appetite and irregular energy, with difficulty both falling and staying asleep. So have you got yours? Does any of those patterns kind of resonate with the answers you've given? So if you have, that's great. And now we're going to see how misaligned you are in your weekdays compared to your weekends. So this important number we need to calculate now is your social jet lag. It's the gap between when your body wants to sleep and when, say, society forces you to sleep. So you can get out your phone and calculate this as we go along if you like. So here's what you need to do. You need to look at your weekday sleep. What time do you go to sleep on work nights? And what time would you wake up? I'm guessing with an alarm. and you find the midpoint between the two. So the way to do that is you would find the number of hours between the times, divide that by 2, and add that to your sleep time. And then you would do the same for your weekend sleep. And the difference between these two midpoints is your social jet lag number. So let's do an example just so that we know that we're doing it right. So if you're a wolf trapped in a morning schedule, let's say you sleep at midnight and you wake up at 7 a.m. Now there are 7 hours between those two times. So you take 7 and you divide it by 2. That gives you 3.5. So you add this 3.5 hours to midnight, which is your sleep time, and you get a midpoint of 3:30 a.m. Now you look at your weekends and we see that you would sleep at 2 a.m. usually and wake up at 10 a.m. without an alarm. That's 8 hours between these two times. So you divide 8 by 2, which gives you 4 hours. Add 4 hours to 2 a.m., which is your sleep time, and it gives you a midpoint of 6 a.m. And the difference between 3:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. is 2.5 hours of social jet lag. So your body thinks you live in one time zone and society thinks you live in another. And that means that every Monday you're recovering from jet lag without actually traveling anywhere. Hopefully you've got your number. So here's what it means. Less than 1 hour difference between those points, those midpoints, it means you're pretty well aligned. There's minimal disruption to your biological clocks. 1 to 2 hours, there's moderate social jet lag there. It's like living in London but working on Berlin time. Your body is probably managing, but it's harder than it should be. At 2 to 3 hours, that's significant misalignment. It's like living in London but working on Athens or Helsinki time. Your cellular clocks are likely to be quite confused by this. And at 3 hours plus, that is severe disruption. It's like living in London but working on Moscow time. It's creating biological chaos every single week. And research shows that people with 2 hours plus of social jet lag have roughly double the risk of metabolic disease. But what really matters is this isn't occasional jet lag from a trip to Europe that you're recovering from in a few days. This is every single week, 52 times a year that you're putting your body through this. So your liver thinks it's Tuesday in one time zone, your brain thinks it's Wednesday in another, your pancreas is trying to figure when on earth it should release certain hormones. It's cellular chaos. And if you calculated 2+ hours, you know now why you're always tired. But the good news is that you're about to learn how to improve the situation. And if you're under 1 hour, you're going to learn how to optimize what you're already doing well. So let's start with some strategies. So lions, the early dominators. Now lions, you wake up ready to conquer the world before everyone else really has had their coffee. And society, I think, loves you. But evening obligations probably drain you. So your strategy would be to protect your morning peak. Schedule your most demanding work before noon if you can, because this is when your brain is like a laser. Complex problem solving, difficult conversation, strategic planning, trying to do all of that before lunch if you can. Front loading everything in your day. And if you have a choice, put important meetings, workouts and creative work in the morning as well, because by 3 p.m. you might well be starting to run on fumes. With regard to evening obligations, you're going to face pressure to stay out late. So here's permission to politely decline or leave early if you feel you need to, because your biology is most likely calling to you. Now you need light exposure, like everyone else, but try to get bright light when you wake up, which is naturally going to be around 5 or 6 a.m. for you, because this maintains your early rhythm. If you're jet lagged, sunlight first thing in the morning will help you adjust faster. And next up are bears. You're the majority, and society was built for you. Solar rhythms align with your chronotype, but you can still optimize significantly. And your strategy would be to do a morning warm-up. Don't schedule critical meetings in the first hour or two of waking up. You need to ease into peak performance, and that's okay. Use this time for email, routine, kind of tasks and coffee. So you would want to protect your midday peak because this is your golden window, usually 10 a.m. to around 2 p.m. And guard this time for deep, focused work. This is when your brain is probably firing on all cylinders. And Bear's biggest mistake is filling 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. with meetings instead of your most important work. Meetings are collaborative, but they're not deep work, so try protecting this peak for focused work that moves the needle. You may well hit a natural energy drop around about 2 or 3 p.m. And this is the perfect time for things like administrative tasks or even physical activity if you can, or even a 20-minute power nap, which we'll talk a little bit about later. In the evening, you might well get a second wind, so you'll get this renewed energy around about 6 or 8 p.m, which is great for social activities or even very light work, but start winding down by around about 9 or 10 p.m. Your body wants to follow the sun's movements. And next will be wolves. This one is for the night owls or the evening warriors. So wolves, your alarm will go off and you'll probably immediately regret every life choice you've made that led you up to this moment. And you'll stumble in the shower, you'll make coffee, you'll stare at your computer screen, and the words might as well be hieroglyphics to you because your brain is mush in the morning. And then at 9 p.m, suddenly something else happens. You're solving problems, you're making connections, and you're doing your best work because your brain is alive when everyone else has gone to bed. And you might well have been called lazy your entire life or told just to go to bed earlier, but you're not lazy. You're a wolf and you've been born and you work in a lion's world or even a bear's world. So here is where I would like to tell you a story. Now, I'm a wolf by chronotype and I'm a physician, so I have to get up early in the morning. And a few years ago, I started waking on some of these days with pressure in my right eye and twinges at the back of the right side of my head. And then within hours, my vision would feel like it was going blurry and I'm trying to see patients and my brain is giving out. And this starts happening every week and then multiple times per week. So I end up investigating, see a neurologist, I get an MRI. And I'm lying in that scanner and my clinical curiosity is kicking in, knowing that these are likely migraines, but then also wondering if something else was happening because these were side-locked headaches, always on the right side. And the results were relief. The brain was, or it seemed structurally fine, but also I was still getting headaches. So the neurologist felt that these were likely migraines that happened to be side-locked, and they asked me to try some medications and then perhaps think about prophylactic medications if necessary. Now, I wasn't keen on taking the prophylactic stuff because that would mean I'd be on a tablet every single day. But the other medications, they certainly dull the pain of the migraines when they happen. But then I noticed something. On my work days, migraines are way worse. But then on my days off, I'd be sleeping in, trying to catch up. And then on the next work day, I'd have a brutal migraine. And that pattern kind of clicked for me. My shifting wake times and trying to sleep in on days off and forced early wake-ups on my work days, my brain was just struggling to keep up with that. The constant schedule shifting seemed to be triggering migraines. Now, I'd always known that I'm a wolf, but I hadn't really connected it to this in such a way. So I started optimizing my sleep, protecting my sleep schedule as best as I could, reduce stress, lifestyle things. And do the migraines disappear? They definitely improve. They don't fully disappear, and I still do get them, but I understand this connection now. When my sleep quality drops or when I disrupt my pattern, the migraines get way worse. So it isn't a full cure, but it is definitely management. And my own clinical problem solving seemed to work when I applied it to my own biology. So if you're a wolf, I feel your pain. So here's how to finally try to listen to that if you can. Just think your brain is mush before 10 a.m. Try to accept that. Don't schedule critical decisions or important presentations or complex problem solving during those fog hours. Keep your morning routine as simple as you can. Light therapy is key for you. As soon as you wake up, try to get 30 minutes of bright light. Outdoor sunlight is going to be the best, and the light therapy box second. This is your single most powerful tool to shift your rhythm earlier if you need to. Try to delay caffeine by 90 minutes after waking, because your adenosine levels need to clear naturally first, and caffeine too early can actually make the fog worse later on. Now, in the evening hours, this is your absolute superpower. After 5 p.m, your brain is starting to come alive, you're creative, you're focused, you're productive, and everyone else is starting to wind down. So try to protect these hours for your best work if possible, scheduling important meetings or creative work or strategic thinking for these kind of peak hours. With regards to work, is it possible to have some kind of flexibility conversation with your employer? If you work these traditional schedules, advocating for yourself is quite useful. You could say, I'm a genetic evening chronotype, and research seems to show that I'm significantly more productive in the afternoon and evening. Could we discuss a late start or a late schedule as a trial for 30 days perhaps? You'd be happy to take evening calls or international clients. Could frame it as productivity or optimization rather than personal preference, because it's in line with your biology. Now, of course, you need to see whether that would actually fit with the rest of what you want to do with your life, because obviously there are more complexities here, and not every employer is going to say yes to that, but some will. And working during your actual peak hours instead of your biological midnight, that could potentially be life-changing. Now, dolphins. These are the light sleepers. Dolphins, you probably have the toughest challenge with your sleep being naturally fragmented. You might rarely feel fully rested. You're likely got some kind of easily rousable brain that won't shut off. So this isn't your fault. It's your nervous system. You might be more sensitive and your sleep drive is lighter. But there are strategies that can help. And with you guys, the sleep environment is absolutely key. Essentially non-negotiable. Your environment needs to be perfect because you're sensitive to everything. There must be darkness, blackout curtains, eye masks, cover every LED. Even tiny light might well disrupt your sleep when you're trying to get off to sleep. The temperature is important, around about 18 degrees or 20 degrees, which is 65 or 68 degrees Fahrenheit, because your body isn't going to sleep if it's too warm. And again, this is biology, not preference. With regards to extraneous sound, you might want to use a white noise machine. There are apps for this, or even earplugs, because sudden noises might easily rouse you. And there's this special clock rule, really, which is important for everyone, but particularly for dolphins. Dolphins, you might well be lying in bed at, say, 2:35 a.m. and you're looking at the clock. It's 2:35 because you've checked your phone, and you might have checked it again, and you're calculating, if I fall asleep in the next 15 minutes, I've only got a certain number of hours to sleep before I need to wake up. And then you start worrying about that and thinking, I'm doing maths at 2:35 in the morning, and then you're getting more and more awake as this process is going on. So your brain is really good at thinking, and when you check the time, your brain starts to do certain things like release certain hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which are going to wake you up. So removing every clock from your bedroom may well be really important. And if you can't fall asleep within 20 minutes, or if you wake up and you can't fall asleep within 20 minutes, get out of bed, go to another room, do something genuinely boring, like read something really dull, or listen to really soft music, or do some really gentle stretching. And keep the lights very, very dim, and only return to bed when you feel actually sleepy, because this will train your brain that bed is for sleep, not bed is for anxiety and wakefulness. Now, in terms of daytime strategies for dolphins and people struggling with sleep, try not to nap. We'll talk about naps a bit later, but they could make your nighttime sleep worse. And again, like everyone, get bright light first thing in the morning, because this will set your clock. With regards to exercise for dolphins, try to finish at least 4 hours before bed. Again, this is valuable advice for everyone, and because this will affect your temperature and your stress hormones and allow you to get off to sleep if you finish exercise early enough. Cut off your caffeine by noon because your sensitivity may well mean that you will be more sensitive to it lingering. Shift workers. You face the biggest challenge here because you're fighting the most misalignment. And I'm not going to lie, there's no way to fully fix this, but there are ways to minimize the damage. And there are 3 essentials. And the first one is light management is everything. So during your shift, which is your biological day, you need bright light, and that light may need to come from a light therapy box. And on your drive home or on your journey home, it is critical that you use something to block the bright sunlight. And that might be wearing wraparound sunglasses or a high quality blue light blocking glasses. Because morning sunlight tells your brain that it's time to wake up, and you need to block that signal. And at the same token, your bedroom, when you get there, needs to be a cave. Blackout curtains that seal the edges, eye masks as backup, covering every LED. Basically, complete darkness is important. And the second part is, can you maintain your schedule? If possible, can you keep your night schedule even on days off? And I know this might be hard because there are other things in life that you need to be there for. So things like your family and your friends. But basically, constantly flipping back and forth creates this weekly jet lag that compounds the damage. So if you must flip back, trying to minimize the number of transitions. And 3, health monitoring is really important in those that are on permanent or persistent night shifts, because your health risks are elevated. So getting things like metabolic panels and blood pressure monitoring and cardiovascular screening and mental health check-ins, at least annually, might be quite important. Now, the full shift worker protocol, things like meal timing, caffeine strategy, nap timing, there's quite a lot to be able to talk in one video. So I'll try and write something and perhaps link that in the description for you, because it will just be too detailed for this one video. But it is important information, so I hope it helps. So let's now talk about some universal optimization tools, and these principles work for all chronotypes. So master these and everything else will likely get easier. And the first one is morning light, which is your most powerful tool. And if you picture this, you wake up still groggy, you don't want to go outside, it's cold, it's maybe raining, and you're in your pajamas, but you step out of your front door or onto the balcony anyway, just for a few minutes, and that light that hits your face, it's brighter than you expected, even through the clouds. It's 10 times brighter than your indoor lights, and your eyes will adjust to that. You haven't drunk any coffee, you didn't take anything to wake you up, you just stood outside for 120 seconds. And in those 120 seconds or 2 minutes, this light hits your retina, the back of your eye, and sends a signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's your master clock. And it immediately suppresses melatonin production and triggers your wake-up cascade. And so you've just reset your entire circadian system. You just reset your biological clock by stepping outside in your pajamas. If you can do that, great. And if you can't get outside, perhaps try sitting by a window. And for wolves trying to shift earlier, especially in winter darkness, a 10,000 lux light therapy box for 20 to 30 minutes will work very well as well. And this one habit affects everything else. The second habit is to remember that your bed is sacred. So that means no phones, no laptops, no work, no scrolling. You need a strong psychological association that bed equals sleep. And so move all of the devices out of there. And the third habit is consistency is king. The same bedtime every night. That includes weekends. Because remember, from part one, you have trillions of cellular clocks throughout your body, and they crave consistency above everything else. So going to bed at midnight every night, even if midnight isn't ideal for you, is better than varying by 2 to 3 hours between weekdays and weekends. And a further rule for the weekend is try not to sleep more than 1 hour past your weekday wake time, because that massive weekend lie-in creates jet lag. Your Monday is more brutal because of it, because your body clock thinks you're in a different time zone. And now the next part is the power nap, a quick kind of bonus section on this really. So 15 to 20 minutes of power napping between 1 to 3 p.m. could well give you a burst of energy without entering deep sleep. And this is great for lions or anyone working late who didn't get enough sleep really. But of course, like mentioned earlier, dolphins or anyone with insomnia, it's probably a good idea to skip naps entirely. They'll potentially make your nighttime sleep routine more difficult. And also never nap for between 30 and 60 minutes because you'll likely wake up more groggy. So either 20 minutes or a full 90 minutes for a full sleep cycle. And we'll talk more about this in the next video, part 2B. Now you know what to do, but why does this work? In part 2B, the next video, we'll look a little bit more into some neuroscience. We'll talk about the glymphatic system and how that cleans your brain every night. We'll look a little bit at sleep architecture and why sleeping pills destroy sleep quality, how caffeine's 6-hour half-life might be sabotaging your sleep, and some newer medications in sleep medicine. And understanding the why makes the how far more powerful. But don't wait for that. Take one action today if you can. Lions, can you protect your morning hours for your best work? Bears, can you stop scheduling critical meetings during your warm-up period? Wolves, are you able to have a flexibility conversation with your employer? And dolphins, can you remove all the clocks from your bedroom tonight? As always, before we end, I want to leave you with something to think about. Every morning when you open your eyes, photons that travelled 93 million miles from the sun strike your retina, and they communicate to your cells that the day has begun. And this conversation between life and a star has been happening for 3 billion years. You are part of this rhythm, and the universe is a vast orchestra. Planets orbit in perfect time, tides rise and fall with the moon, and seasons turn without hesitation. And you carry that same cosmic timing in every cell, rhythms refined across 3 billion years, synchronized not to human schedules, but to the turning of the Earth around our sun. And the sun doesn't apologize for when it rises. Perhaps neither should you. You are biology in conversation with a star 93 million miles away. And that is wondrous. So keep that wonder and keep wondering about life.